What is going on, college basketball fans? Today we got my updated Dannyology Power 35 rankings for Week 12 of college basketball. As always, we drop these every single Monday morning, and we got a bunch of other college basketball content here on the channel as well. So make sure you guys subscribe if you guys are new. Hit that like button if you guys enjoy, and comment down below your thoughts and opinions on my rankings. And yeah, guys, let's get it started. All right, so yet another wild week in college basketball. A ton of upsets, a ton of top teams going down, and we're kind of getting used to that at this point, as we should be every year of college basketball. But the past few weeks, a lot of top teams have been going down. But I feel like my rankings, I feel good about them. I spent a lot of time trying to justify why each team should be where. All the way from 1 to 35. So let me know your guys' thoughts and opinions down below, but I'm going to break it all down. So at number 1, we do have the Purdue Boilermakers coming back up on top. They are the last remaining, at least in the Power 6 conferences, one-loss team in college basketball. That one loss coming to Rutgers in a one-point game, very close. And when college basketball, and especially the Big Ten Conference, is so inconsistent and everybody's kind of beating everyone, it's really nice to have Purdue, who only has one loss, and other than that has been very consistent. Looks like a very good team. They're sitting here at number 1. The only other team I would even consider putting at number 1 at this point is the Alabama Crimson Tide. I could definitely see arguments for Alabama to be number 1, but they should be no further down than number 2. My top 3 should be everybody's top 3 in my opinion at this point in time. You could change up the order of these 3 if you wanted to, but I think this is the top 3 that everyone should have at this point. But Alabama coming in at number 2, they look like the hottest team in the country. They're destroying everyone. They go on the road to Missouri and beat them. And the SEC, which in my opinion is probably the second best conference in college basketball, they are dominating teams week in and week out. So I got Alabama up here at number 2. I could definitely see arguments for them being number 1, but for now I have them sitting at 2. At number 3, we do have the Kansas State Wildcats. Only 2 losses in a very, very tough Big 12 conference that never has an easy game. I mean, they beat Kansas. It was at home in a very close game in overtime, but they did beat Kansas, and then they beat Texas Tech, which you think they might have a hangover game after defeating, their biggest rival, in-state rival, who was my former number 1 team in the country last week. But no, they go on and keep winning. Their only loss in conference play is to TCU, and they are sitting alone in first place of the Big 12 Conference. They're coming in here at number 3. They look like a very solid team. They're going to be scary down the stretch in March. At number 4, back up. Look at Arizona crawling back from the dead. Back up at number 4. I think I dropped them down to like 13, 14 in that range last week. Well, they're back up. They got 2 really good wins in the Pac-12 over Arizona State and over UCLA. So those are 2 really good games, and although Arizona does have 3 losses to 3 not so great teams in Oregon, Washington State, and Utah, whenever they play a really good team like Tennessee, like UCLA, or even an Arizona State, who's probably still a tournament team at this point, they get the job done, and they play at their best when they're playing against top competition. I still think Arizona, they looked really good this week. They had a really good week. They're up here at number 4. I wasn't going to move them up as high as they are, but they do have that head-to-head win over Tennessee. And Tennessee's a team that, a couple weeks ago they did lose there to Kentucky at home, and that didn't look good at all. But other than that, they have been dominating the SEC almost just as good as Alabama has, other than that one loss there to Kentucky. And when you look at that game on the road to Arizona, it was a very close game. And on a neutral site court, you might take Tennessee in that one to win. So I was very back and forth on who I wanted to put ahead in this one. But since Arizona does have the head-to-head, even though it was in Tuscan, a very good environment, I did still give the nod there to Arizona. Tennessee coming right behind them. Like I said, other than that one loss to Kentucky, they have been pretty consistent and been pretty dominant, and they do have wins over Kansas. Close loss to Arizona, like they played top teams. So I'm excited to watch Tennessee versus Alabama coming up soon. Tennessee playing in the Big 12 SEC Challenge this week. There's a lot of good games coming up. We're going to find a lot out this week in college basketball. I'm super hyped for it. So at number 6, we do have UCLA, and I made a mistake earlier. I said Arizona beat Arizona State and UCLA. They actually beat USC and Arizona State. Still really good wins there for Arizona. UCLA was the team that beat Arizona State on the road and then lost to Arizona. So they're only down one spot for me from last week. I still think UCLA, they've been very consistent throughout the season, and they look like a really good team, very good defensive team. I really like what they got going on there, and even though they lost in a close one in Tucson, I still have them up here at number 6. At number 7, I do have the Houston Cougars. They just took a loss here yesterday to the Temple Owls in a big time shocker. They were my number, I think, 3 or 4 team last week. I didn't have them as my number 1 team, but really not too much has changed for me on my opinions of Houston. I mean, they've played in a lot of close games against not so great teams. They just happened to finally lose to one of them in the Temple Owls, and I still think that they are a team that has championship potential and a team that has a good win over Virginia on the road this year that looks really good. But, they've been playing in close games a lot this year. I'm not surprised that they dropped one, but they are down here at number 7. We'll see if they can bounce back from that, because usually when a team is winning a lot of very close games and then they finally lose one, then they kind of like hits the switch for a little bit and they go on a big time winning streak, dominating teams. I could definitely see Houston heading in that direction, but we will see how they rebound from that loss. At number 8, we do have Virginia, a team that Houston did go on the road and defeat there in Charlottesville. But Virginia, they're back up ever since that loss on the road to Pitt. They've been playing good. They've gotten wins over North Carolina, just beating up everybody in the ACC ever since then, and they're looking really good. And they also have really good early season wins over teams like Illinois and Baylor, so they're up here at number 8. At number 9, we do have the Kansas Jayhawks. They fell down to 9 after they were undefeated in the Big 12, and their only loss was to Tennessee. But 2 losses, 0-2 week this week, a very close one on the road to Kansas State in overtime. I wasn't going to knock them down too much for that one, but then they go back on at home and lose by 20 to TCU, so I had to move them down here to 9. I honestly probably could have moved them further down, but I thought 9 was a really good spot, especially considering my number 10 right here. At number 10, we do have Iowa State, a team that Kansas did beat in a close one, so that kind of made sense right there, and that's kind of why they fell to that point. So Iowa State coming in here at number 10. They did have a loss to Oklahoma State this week, which did not look good, but still a 1-1 week. Those losses are going to happen. They have an opportunity this week at home in Ames against my number 3 team, Kansas State. That's going to be an amazing game. I cannot wait for that one. Iowa State, I'm pretty sure they were at 10 last week. After a 1-1 week, they're still here at number 10. At number 11, we do have TCU. Iowa State did defeat TCU this season on a buzzer beater on the road in Fort Worth, so that kind of made sense why that ranking was there. But TCU, they did just beat Kansas by 20 points, but they did have a 1-1 week this week because they did lose on the road to West Virginia. So that's not a very good loss there for TCU. If they would have beat West Virginia, then gone on the road and defeated Kansas by 20, I mean, TCU would have easily made it into the top 10, but they're down here at 11 still. That was a really good win. You guys might be saying, well, Kansas defeated or TCU defeated Kansas, why isn't TCU above them? Well, let's not overreact too much from that game. Kansas is still going to play TCU again later in the season. If TCU goes 2-0 against Kansas, then it's going to be hard to put Kansas above them, but TCU did defeat TCU did lose to Iowa State, and they did lose to Texas, so they're above a team that they lost to. That brings me to my number 12 team, the Texas Longhorns, and the reason I do have TCU above them is because that amazing win there at Kansas, and because the way Texas beat TCU, it was at Texas in the Moody Center, and TCU was up like 17, 18 points in that game, and they just blew it. So I do think TCU is the better team than Texas, but it is very, very close. And I'm excited. That's another one where I'm excited to see a rematch between TCU and Texas and Fort Worth. At number 13, after a stretch of 4 Big 12 teams there, I do have Marquette. And Marquette, my top-ranked Big East team at this point, they have been playing amazing. And there's another situation where I have Marquette above a team that they lost to in Xavier, but that is because they went into Cincinnati, into Xavier, a very tough, hostile environment, and barely lost that game. So in the return game in Milwaukee, very excited to see that matchup because Marquette, really good win over Providence this week, 2-0 week. They're up at 13. They are playing really good basketball right now. At number 14, we do have Gonzaga after a shocking loss to Loyola Marymount. At home, snapping a 76-game win streak at home for the Zags. They're down out of the top 10, down at 14. I still think Gonzaga is a really good team, and they're another team like Houston we were talking about earlier, that they were playing in a lot of close games against teams like Santa Clara, BYU, and they just so happened to finally lose one. So my opinion on them hasn't really changed too much. They're another team. Let's see how they rebound from this loss, and will they start dominating teams there in the West Coast Conference, because right down the list there at 18, we have another West Coast Conference team that I'm very close to starting to put above Gonzaga. So I'm excited to watch them play here soon. At number 15, we do have Xavier. They are another team that took a very bad loss this week to DePaul. And DePaul, if it wasn't for Georgetown, they would be the worst team in the Big East. We all know how bad Georgetown is, but DePaul almost just as bad, and they lost. They beat Xavier there. We'll see how Xavier rebounds from this. They already got a good win over Georgetown after that, but let's see how they rebound against a actual pretty good team. But they're down also out of the top 10 here at 15. They did lose a head-to-head on a neutral site to Gonzaga in a close one, so that kind of makes sense there. At number 16, we do have Providence, and Providence, they had a 1-1 week. Their loss was to Marquette, so not a shocker there on the road too. I still have Providence around the same spot as I did last week. They might have dropped like 1 or 2, but they're in here still at 16. At number 17, we do have the College of Charleston. They have been killing it lately, man, and they're up in the top 20 this week. I think they're up 3 or 4 spots now this week. Just continue to kill it. They definitely deserve to be up here at number 17. Right behind them, we have St. Mary's, and St. Mary's has been killing it. I mean, for a team like Gonzaga to be playing so close against teams like Santa Clara and stuff like that, St. Mary's has been dominating teams like Santa Clara there in the West Coast Conference. So I've been very impressed by St. Mary's. They're up here at number 18. And my third mid-major team in a row, we got FAU coming in here at the top 20 at number 19. They're another team that just continues to win. Only 1 loss on the season. They defeated their top competition in their league already. Killing it. The Owls are in the top 20. At number 20, we do have the Baylor Bears, and after a very tough start there in the Big 12, they're now on like a 4-game winning streak, or it might be 5 now, so they're on their way back up. They have some good matchups this week, one of them against Kansas, so that is going to be a big test there for Baylor, working their way back up. At number 21, we do have the Auburn Tigers. They had a 2-0 week this week, in a week that a lot of teams were losing, so they're in here at number 21. At number 22, we do have the UConn Huskies, still cracking the top 25. They had a really close loss there to Seton Hall this week. Wasn't great. Bounce back win against Butler. We'll see how they rebound from this, but they're all the way down here at 22. A few weeks ago, if you would have told me that UConn was 1 spot ahead of Kent State, I would have told you maybe call a counselor or something, but they're here. UConn is one spot ahead of Kent State. At 23, we have Kent State, and they are another team that has been on a big time win streak, undefeated in the MAC conference, and just absolutely killing it. So they are in the top 25 this week, moving in there. They definitely deserve it. At number 24, we do have the Clemson Tigers, and they were in at like 19 or 18 for me last week. I kept them in the top 25, even though they did lose to Wake Forest, and then they almost lost to Virginia Tech there, but a big comeback saved them in staying in these rankings here at 24, and we got a big stretch of ACC teams coming up, and I kind of feel like they all kind of fall in this range of like 22 to 30, all these ACC teams. So, but before we get to that ACC stretch, we do have the New Mexico Lobos, and they did lose 2 in a row there to Fresno and then to UNLV, but ever since then they have not lost another game since. So they're back up, they're back in the top 25, and they have good wins. They just beat Boise State in a very close game. Very, very impressive there by the Lobos. They are back up in the top 25 at 25. At 26, we do have North Carolina, another team trying to build their way back up. And ever since they got into ACC play, they lost to Pitt on the road, but so didn't like teams like Virginia. And then they lost to Virginia on the road. But other than that, they've been undefeated in conference play. North Carolina is starting to look better and better. I think this 26th spot is pretty valid here for the Tar Heels, especially because they just beat my number 27 team, who has been playing surprisingly really well in conference play in NC State, and North Carolina beat them by like 12 points or so in Chapel Hill. So with that, NC State falls behind the Tar Heels. At number 28, we do have Boise State, and like I just said, they did lose to New Mexico by 2 points in the pit on the road. So I don't fault Boise State too much for that one. Whenever they're at home, they're very tough to beat. They dominated a team like Nevada, who is really good at home. They've been killing it in the Mountain West. Boise State, they might have dropped like one spot for that loss, but they're still staying around the same range. Still a very good team. At number 29, we do have the Duke Blue Devils, and they just defeated Miami, so they're up a couple of spots now this week, but I didn't move them up too much here. But Miami is a team that moved down quite a bit, down at number 30 this week, because they've been losing. They just lost to Duke on the road, so doesn't mean they really have to be behind Duke, especially because it was such a close game on the road. But they also lost to NC State in a close one last week, so it's hard for me to put Miami up when they're losing a lot of conference games here as of late. I still think they are a team, that has a ton of potential to make a run this year. So doesn't UConn, but that doesn't mean that they get a free pass to stay up in the top. So Miami's down here at 30. We'll see if they can bounce back from this, start to win some road games, and they could easily climb back up here into like the top 20. But at number 31, we do have San Diego State. They're a team that, had a 2-0 week this week, and they did lose to New Mexico not too long ago, but other than that, they've been playing really good in conference play. I think that's their only Mountain West loss. So they also play a pretty good non-conference schedule. So San Diego State, they're up here at 31. At number 32, speaking of teams that are back up, how about Indiana? 2-0 week this week over Michigan State and Illinois. Very, very impressive, because my second place, or who I think is the second best team in the Big Ten, is really between Indiana, Michigan State, and Rutgers. It really just kind of depends on the week. And right now, Indiana is that second best team. They're up here at number 32. At number 33, we do have the Memphis Tigers after a 2-0 week, beating Wichita State and Cincinnati. They're back up here at 33. Let's see if they can start to get a win streak going. At number 34, we do have the Missouri Tigers. And Missouri, they're interesting because they did defeat Arkansas at home, although the reffing in that game was kind of questionable. But a win is a win, and then they lost to Alabama at home, and we all know how good and how hot Alabama has been, so I can't fault them too much for that one, especially because Kobe Brown was injured was not playing in that Alabama game. So Missouri, they're in here at number 34. At number 35, we do have Michigan State, even though they just lost to Indiana in a hostile environment in Assembly Hall. They did still beat Rutgers earlier in this week as well, so they're in here at 35. My teams to watch for next week, we do have Kentucky. Kentucky was a team, they're starting to get on a little bit of a win streak now in the SEC. I think they've won 3 or 4 in a row. I was thinking about putting them in, but then they lost that head-to-head to Michigan State earlier in the season pretty badly. So Michigan State definitely deserved to be in over them, and Kentucky also lost pretty badly to Missouri. So both those teams definitely deserve to be in over Kentucky because both of those teams beat Kentucky. Also, Arkansas lost to Missouri. They're on the road, like I said, the reffing in that game pretty questionable, but Arkansas, they had to fall out this week. They're definitely a team that I could see going on a run and potentially getting back not only into the top 35, but into the top 25 or even 20 if they can start to get on a win streak. USC is a team, they put up a fight there with Arizona this week, and then they went on the road and defeated Arizona State. So pretty good week by USC. They're looking like the third best team in the Pac-12. We'll see if they can maintain that. Next up, we do have Rutgers. Like I mentioned earlier, they did lose to Michigan State earlier in the week. So they had to fall out of the top 35 this week, but they're still on my radar. One of the best defensive teams in the country. Illinois, another team that lost this week. They lost at home to Indiana. They're a team that I could see, working their way back up into the top 35 here soon if they can find some consistency. And lastly, my last team to watch, we do have Nevada, another Mountain West team that has been playing really good, and they just so happen to be losing to these other really good Mountain West teams, so they had to fall, or they had to just miss the cut here. But they're definitely on my radar if they can start to pick up some wins. So that's going to do it for Week 12 Dannyology Power 35 rankings. Let me know what you guys think about them down below in the comment section, and make sure you guys subscribe because we do an updated version of these rankings every single Monday morning. They are always posted early at 7 a.m. Monday morning, and we do a bunch of other college basketball content here on the channel as well. We're really starting to grind. We're going to be daily uploading and streaming all the way to March Madness, so make sure you guys sub if you guys are college basketball fans. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching.